go. What's going on, fellow art warriors? Welcome back to another Art Friends stream. This time we have a very special guest, Ahmed Aldoori to my left. And as always, we got Oliver on my right. And Ahmed, thanks so much for joining us. This is going to be great.
Yo, thanks for inviting me. This is fun.
Yeah, man.
Appreciate it.
We always start our artists off with an icebreaker question, and the question is, if you could be in any video game, like in real life, what would it be?
Oh, that's awesome. God, see, like part of me wants to go like really badass, like God of War, and then there's like Ori and the Blind Forest would be kind of fun.
That would be cool. If you were in Ori, though, like, what would you be? Would you be the little
tree.
character? You'd be a tree.
Yeah, I'd be like a
beautifully, you know, the
Deku tree,
painted tree.
I take it back. Zelda. I'd want to be like a character in a Zelda game.
Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds awesome. That's always a
like
good one.
Like a Deku tree kind of thing.
Okay, so you'd be more like not a prop necessarily, but something that's like all-seeing and all-knowing kind of thing.
Of course, like a spiritual voice, so I'd have something like this.
That's awesome. Cool, man. So, yeah, we kind of want to start you off with like your brief artistic history. Like Oliver mentioned to me that you had gone to Art Center as your kind of like technical training. And I know that you have worked at ArenaNet, done some character concepts and stuff like that. And since then, you've been doing YouTube and a bunch of social media stuff. And I think that's going to be the bulk of our conversation, just kind of like, how did you get to where you are kind of thing.
Sure.
But yeah, why don't we start back in... Well, first of all, like, have you always wanted to be an artist? Are you the kind of kid that was like always drawing and stuff like that?
100%.
That's awesome.
It was Power Rangers, man. Like, I would draw Power Rangers and ninjas, Batman. All right, I'll give the quick, short version of the rundown.
Sure.
Graduated from high school, not knowing what I wanted to do. Didn't really know that art was a possible thing as a career.
Sure.
You know, because YouTube wasn't around.
It
sort of was, but so I went to Computer Science Engineering Technology School, University of Toledo. The most depressing time of my life because I was going to class, like looking at computer code and like playing with, like not playing with it, trying to figure out electronics. And I'm like, I would start getting so depressed and I would skip class to go home and draw and paint. So I ended up dropping out and like failing everything. So
did you go there because somebody told you that might be like a wise career opportunity or something? Gotcha.
It just sounded legitimate as something I could say, hey, this is what I'm doing.
Not like I draw for a living.
Right. So I was definitely under kind of pressure.
Gotcha.
From there, I went to community college just to draw.
Okay.
Life drawing. Didn't really learn much. It was more like things I kind of already knew. Then I went to Columbus College of Art and Design for illustration for a semester. And that was all right. I learned things here and there, but the whole time I really wanted to go to Art Center.
Okay.
Problem was, the idea of moving across the country, because I was living in Ohio, was such a, like, that's not for me. I'm not allowed to do that. That's too much. I don't deserve that. So, but I ended up taking a semester off at that college, made a portfolio and I applied and it worked out. Everything was smooth sailing from there for pretty much. So I studied entertainment design, and that pretty much gave me the backbone of like fundamentals that I didn't fully understand yet.
Sure.
Like the specifics of perspective and draw through and the design process, the iteration, all that stuff. And after the first year there was when I started working, because all the teachers there are working professionals, at least at the time they were. I don't know what it is now. It's probably, I don't know. But so I worked under Scott Robertson for a bit. Through him, I started working for Dylan Cole, who's currently the art director for Avatar 2.
Nice.
Him and I made, he pretty much had the story idea for this kind of kid sci-fi thing. And he's great at backgrounds and matte paintings, but he needed a character artist. So I did all the characters.
Awesome.
From there, various studios, movie VFX concepts, theme park design studios, that kind of thing. And then I graduated Art Center and got an offer to work at ArenaNet. It was kind of out of the blue because I didn't apply, and they needed somebody for something fast, and so somebody recommended me because I had worked for that person before.
That's awesome.
And so I'm like, okay, well, it's for video games, and I know I had like a fork in the road. I could stay in California and keep working, making way more money than I would up in Seattle. I had like offers to be like art director here and there for 6-figure jobs, but I'm like, but ArenaNet, Kekai Kotaki, Daniel Dochu, Jamie Jones, Teo Prince, Carlin Lim, Naomi Baker, like that's where artists go to become artists, So it was like a second, it was like the pay was less than half of what I would be making in LA.
Sure.
So I'm like, do I do it? I mean, why not? And so I said yes, and I packed all my stuff and I drove up from LA to Seattle. And on the way there was when I was also listening to audiobooks regarding business. So, I mean, there was a book called The 10X Rule by Grant Cardone.
Okay.
It's more about real estate, and like, but the premise is like, whatever you want to succeed at, however much effort you think it takes, multiply that by 10. If you don't do that, you're just going to be kind of like floating. And so I'm like, oh man, I feel really behind. And so that coupled with a couple other books, right when I started ArenaNet is when I started the YouTube channel. Gotcha. So I would kind of like go to work, come home, make art, and every weekend I would just put out some kind of video. And I would talk about my job. I would talk about like some tutorials, like, hey, here's an easy way to draw a face, and here's an easy way to paint. And I think that's what the entry level was for kind of building a following, because people became familiar with my ability to teach directly and clearly. And, once I had a big enough following, I was like, all right, I want to be independent. And so I quit ArenaNet and went back to actually teach at Art Center for a little bit. So I taught there and at Brainstorm for a while, as well as CGMA. But then I wanted to become even more independent. So now I'm just completely, fully just teaching online, or not right now, not yet. I'm actually building some courses. Cool. But, all that entrepreneurship ideals stuff, like I just want that. That was my goal. So here I am.
That's awesome, because I feel like I'm not taking exactly the same path, but I definitely feel like I'm a little bit more entrepreneurial. I always consider myself a little bit more business minded and wanted to kind of do things myself. I just find enjoyment out of it. But is there somebody that kind of like pushed you in that direction, or what kind of got you thinking in that kind of mindset? Because I think a lot of artists see ArenaNet or a company like that potentially like as the end goal, as opposed to the starting point.
Right. For me, it's just, I think it's more of a feeling that pushed me. And it's like, as artists, we really, really, really don't like being put in a box and told what to do. Right.
I can feel that.
even though it was the dream job, like doing fantasy characters and armors and environments, it was beautiful work, but it wasn't mine.
Sure.
And so I think it was selfish pride. That's like, I want to do my own thing. Right.
Gotcha.
So I think those kinds of ambitions are what pushed me to do it. Specific people or names or whatever. I mean, like Grant Cardone, who I mentioned earlier, just that military sounding audiobook voice was just like, you need to get to work. You can't be behind. Get going. And I'm like, yeah, I need to make YouTube videos. And so there's that. Plus, some of my friends were also entrepreneurial minded. So my buddy from New Zealand, Liam McDonald, who's also actually starting a YouTube channel soon.
Nice.
Him and I would talk about business. Like we would talk about our end goal of like, well, I want to make whatever I want and not worry about finances.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, how do I get there? And working underneath someone else's vision wasn't the way for me. And, you also got people like Gary Vaynerchuk or Gary V.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys are familiar. So, I used to watch a lot of his stuff. And I can't think of anything else, but those are pretty much the voices, that's the business side of things.
Are you a Ty Lopez kind of guy?
I was. No, I watched the stuff. I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. Read lots of books, get more knowledge. The more you know, the more you make. Right?
Knowledge.
Fair enough. Yeah. I might get a like toy Lamborghini and just like do the same thing. Like,
Yeah. Here, my
uh,
garage.
yeah. So, there's the business side of things, and there's like the other part of me that's like, well, what do I want to say in the world? And
Mhm.
people like Ian McCaig were really inspirational for me, and his world building and his vision and his charisma and his kind of vibe that he puts out in the world of like, you can be an artist too,
Yeah.
and things that I wish I heard when I was 4 or 5.
Mm.
And so I kind of want to put that out in the world as well. um, and I think I do attract a lot of people who need that, and who need a place or a voice to feel like that the person they're hearing understands them, because we've
Sure.
all had these struggles, which is why I talk about mental health a lot.
Mm.
It's not all rainbows and butterflies.
Of course.
So those were the motivating factors.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, in terms of kind of like keeping yourself motivated, and since we're on that mental health sort of topic, I kind of feel like you have like a thing that you do. And Oliver and I were talking about this a little bit yesterday. Like, we were like, does he do any 3D? Does he like do much besides like that kind of character illustration stuff? Like, what keeps you doing that? And also just like, how are you able to pump this stuff out so regularly? Because I feel like you're one of those artists that like I can look on your social media and see relatively regular work, whereas it might be like a couple months before I post another illustration. So what's like
Mhm.
kind of keeping you kind of going?
Dude, I don't know, man. Like, that's my same question to other people who are like
Gotcha.
going out like machines. So
Yeah,
I'm
yeah, yeah.
like, I understand the question, point of view. I don't know. Like, do I do 3D? I'm trying to learn Blender. I'm
Okay.
taking a break from that for now, because I'm uh, trying to build this course. But um, hmm, yeah, I don't know. It's just, I leaned into what I'm good at, and I
Sure.
can draw faces. My obsession for a long time was, why do faces look good and why do they look bad?
Mm.
So I went into a deep dive of like proportions,
Sure.
distances, expressions, the specific ratio of a triangle between eyes, nose. Like, I was just obsessed.
Yeah.
And so when I draw now, like, I'm pulling from that. I can make someone look really evil or really friendly, or very arousing or attractive or cute. And so there's like
Mm.
a whole range of things that I can do because of that obsession.
Mm.
Um, and so, yeah, when it comes to characters and faces and portraits, um, unfortunately, that is what is usually more popular on
Sure.
social media. Because I think as humans, we relate to faces, we relate to people and characters. And I think art that is more about construction or world building, I love that stuff. And it's just a fact of the human nature that it's only going to be appreciated by people who appreciate that stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
That makes sense.
Whereas the limbic resonance that happens with seeing a face or seeing something that's attractive or cute or evil and gnarly, like there's a emotional reaction to it, which you can
Hmm.
still do with everything else, like
Yeah.
an environment and stuff. But
But it's more
um,
relatable when it's another character or
right,
person or creature or
right,
whatever.
right. I mean, an audience doesn't go to a play just to see the stage,
Hmm.
And so while we love making the stage and the lighting and the props
Hmm.
and the creatures in there, uh, the captivating part
Hmm.
is definitely the actors. So
Interesting.
mm,
Interesting. So, what I've also kind of noticed is, looking at your YouTube channel, there was a little bit of a gap, and I did notice on your, I'm fortunately not a patron right now, but I did see a post about not doing any more, uh,
mhm.
less, how'd you phrase it, tutorials
Right.
or whatever for the time
Yeah.
being. Are you able to talk about kind of like
Yeah.
what your thing is right now? Is it that course
Mhm.
that you were speaking of, or?
Yeah. So let me just talk about the gap that you mentioned. So I took
Sure.
a lot of breaks,
Okay.
and most of that was me trying to find myself.
Okay.
Like, imagine being a hermit and being afraid of the world, and then you
Sure.
take a step out, try something, and then you feel, I don't know, down about yourself, so you go back into the hermit mode.
Hmm.
And so I
I
did that a
totally get
lot.
it. Gotcha.
Right. couple months break. I think I took a 9-month break at one point or something. I don't know. But during those breaks, I wrote a lot. I watched a lot of mental health videos on codependency, narcissism, raised by parent. Like, there's so many things that I needed to get through, as uncomfortable and emotional as it was, and feeling super down at the bottom of a well kind of thing. Those moments are what helped me build back up to being more consistent now. So, which led me to Patreon. So for a while, Patreon was, once a month, I would create a package of a new topic, like, hey, composition this month, or painting skin tones, or whatever. It felt like what I did was I built a box around myself.
Gotcha.
Like, here we go again. Here's me feeling like I'm doing a chore, and it's serving the expectations in my mind of what people are demanding. And so it felt very anxiety inducing. So I'm like, I gotta stop doing this. And I was like, I know I'm going to stop making money for a little bit, but I want to redirect all my efforts to YouTube and the course thing. So yeah, I just said, hey, I'm deleting all the tiers on Patreon where you get tutorials, because I'm not doing them anymore. If you still want to support, there's the $1 tier, the $3 tier to have access to my personal Discord.
And what is the link, just so you can plug it really quick?
Oh, yeah, sure. Didn't think that ahead of time. Patreon.com/Ahmed Aldoori, but I'll post it in chat.
Cool.
Oh, sorry, are we allowed to swear in here? Oh, my bad.
Yeah. That's
okay.
Cool. So have you ever considered doing some sort of like big personal project or something like that? Like, you see, Ross Tran does he has his like Nema book and stuff like that. Have you ever dove into any of those sort of endeavors, or has it always been like, I'm going to draw for myself, and then I'm also going to turn these drawings into tutorials and stuff like that to sell online? I'm going to teach, and that's kind of your avenue of like your brand and, your income and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well, by the way, these questions are great. You're really good at, kind of navigating these ideas. But yeah, definitely. And so I've always been talking about and hinting at an art book and projects and all this stuff, potentially a video game. I don't know. I'm talking to a lot of people about this stuff. But the thing is, when I thought about making an art book or project, there was a lot of stress and anxiety, and very much this like, what is it that I put in this book so that I can offer, so that people accept it? Please, right? And so that I would like sit there and draw myself, like a little stick figure version of myself doing that pose, and like, this is what it feels like.
Yeah.
Why does it feel this way? And so like, it was very much approval seeking and stuff. So most of it was like, I have to make this really good so that I can be financially backed. Right. So the goal was money, and I saw that as a problem.
Yeah.
Which is why I'm shifting things and saying, okay, right now, my efforts are to ramp up the YouTube channel, right? Remind people I exist, and build a course and sell it. And the reason I'm doing it independently is because, I taught at Brainstorm, I taught at CGMA Art Center, CCS in Detroit, all this concept art stuff. So I have the knowledge for it. But when you zoom out and see where the money's going, I'm like, wait a second. I have a bigger platform than all of them combined.
Yeah.
Why am I letting them get 80% of what the students are paying?
Yeah.
When I could get 100%. And so what I want to do is be financially stable with something like that, where I'm not really attached to it emotionally. Then I could feel free to do the art and then put that out in the world.
Gotcha.
Yeah. I don't want that art book to be intended for money. I want it to be intended to express myself. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I definitely see that, because also it's kind of like, if you're working on a game or a course or something, it's like somebody's like interacting with it as well, even though you're selling it for money. There's this, I don't know, interaction component. So I don't know, maybe that's why you're kind of feeling like that.
Mhm.
I could kind of see that.
Mhm.
That's interesting. Uh, let's see, what other questions do I have for you? Oh, let's talk
Mhm.
about music a little bit, because like we were talking before, I saw that you play guitar a little bit. You're pretty good,
Mhm.
man, and
Thanks.
I definitely like your style. I'm into the same kind of like Phrygian scale sort of Middle Eastern
Hell
vibe
yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
But do you have any hobbies outside of art besides your music, or is that kind of like your go-to?
It's definitely what I do when I'm not drawing.
Gotcha.
Lately, my focus has been art, YouTube, music, and fitness. So
Nice.
I used to climb a lot, like at a climbing
Mm,
gym,
yeah.
but because of recent things, I'm taking a break from that. Other hobbies, not really. I think the thing that takes up most of my time is just interacting with people,
Mm,
getting back to emails, being on my Patreon Discord, talking to people, helping them out.
mm-hmm.
Like they definitely exploit me to get free crits here and
Yeah,
there,
yeah,
but which I'm not. I don't do that. I don't give free crits.
yeah.
Um, but you know who you are. So whenever I hear, I mean, I feel like I'm an empath where I can sense what people are feeling. So
Mm-hmm.
when I can sense that somebody's feeling down about their art
Mm-hmm.
or, you know, completely aimless about their portfolio, I usually can help. And so I'll talk to them, and stuff like that takes a lot of time. And then there's just like hours and hours of memeing and playing, I don't play games anymore, but we used to play games on there.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Actually, sorry to deviate from the original question a bit, but like speaking of like transitioning from that like student to professional area, like
Mm.
did you ever struggle with your portfolio in terms of like knowing what the pipeline? Did they teach you that at Art Center, or was that something you learned more at ArenaNet? Is that or is
It's
that
definitely something I learned at ArenaNet. I
yeah?
mean, so Art Center definitely teaches fundamentals, foundations, execution, having pretty layouts and all that stuff. Um, but weird thing is, when I got hired at ArenaNet, I didn't know what I was hired for,
Mm.
right? Like it wasn't clear to me. And so I'm like sitting there thinking they wanted me to paint stuff. And it wasn't until like I had to like actually inquire, because no, at first people were shy and weren't telling me what's going on, and so they clarify like, yeah, we're doing these armor sets, and like we want you to design them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, what? And so like I realized that the clarity wasn't there until later.
Mm.
So regarding portfolio, if I was to do that again, I would probably see what kind of art that their artists are doing and make a portfolio based on that. Because like they didn't hire me, and like they didn't see my portfolio and say, hey, but let's get this guy.
Mm.
It's more that they trusted someone who knows me, who I've worked for, right? And I did have work online, but it wasn't like a collection of things. So I had paintings, I had designs, I had theme park stuff. So I wasn't fully sure what was going on. And in retrospect, there should have been more communication. But yeah, yeah. Does that
Cool,
sort of
yeah.
answer your question? Yeah.
It does, yeah, because I think the biggest struggle, even for me, is like that transition, like knowing, because when you're 18, 19, you don't really know like who you are or what you kind of want to go into. And I think
Mm.
currently the school system doesn't really get you to develop like what your true kind of artistic um,
Mhm.
voices, because they just kind of bombard you with assignments and you're not really sure where you fit in the pipeline either. So I think, yeah, I
Right.
think that's kind of because it's just something that I struggle, and I was just wondering if at the time you're not really sure whether if you wanted to be part of the production part or the like more of the
Mm.
kind of illustration and the marketing side or
Right.
something.
So
Yeah.
you're a student, correct?
I am a student, yeah,
And
still
where are you going?
sorry, pardon.
Where are you going to school?
I'm in the UK. It's called Teesside. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Man, the UK was the last place I was before all this stuff happened.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember. Yeah.
yeah. Why didn't
Yeah.
you come to the meetup?
Yeah. Oh, so me and my girlfriend had to leave the day on that day of this meetup.
Ah,
So my
yeah, that's
friend,
all
but
good.
yeah.
Yeah,
But actually, we have a couple questions. If Nick, is that all right? If
Yeah,
we
yeah, yeah.
kind
We've
of
got a good
jump in?
question from
Yeah.
Cubes. She says, "Do you let your music and art inspire each other, or do you keep your art and music as their own separate things?"
huh. For me, when I play music, if I'm doing just a cover of a song, that's one thing. But like, I
Mhm.
do also think about in the future, if I made like a game with a theme, I'll
Mhm.
like think about what the music would be for that game,
Mhm.
right? So I
Yeah.
imagine the art, it could be like Arabian Nights kind of thing, or
Mhm.
but with a twist, and then maybe I'll do like a slightly, um, I don't know, a couple melodies here and there based on that. So it does inspire some of my artistic thoughts, but I haven't actually dove in to execute that.
Mm.
But I do think about it. But for the most part, no, I just keep them separate.
Gotcha. So one of the things I wanted to talk about is when you were kind of transitioning out of ArenaNet into your own stuff, were you still doing freelance and stuff like that, or was it kind of like you already had enough going on with your own thing that you kind of just commit to that?
Huh. Yeah, I had just barely enough income online to pay for rent.
Gotcha.
So
It
I was
was so it
actually
was
kind
kind
of
of
worried
a risky
when I left.
move.
Yeah, yeah.
Gotcha.
I was worried at first, and hmm, I think for a while I would just kind of trust that something good would happen in
Mhm.
terms of like building up. Because at the time, I think I was only at 50,000 subscribers or something
Mhm.
on YouTube, and Patreon was making just barely enough to pay for rent.
Sure.
But that's when I got an offer to teach at art center. So in a way, that became another motivating factor of like um, transitioning and feeling like validated and supported by
Sure.
something. Um, and that was another thing that also helped me transition to being completely independent.
Mhm.
Uh, but I did freelance here and there, and at a point, it was like I don't know why I would say yes to certain things. Uh,
I definitely
like
I feel like I'm at that point right now.
yeah, yeah. I needed the money for sure.
Yeah.
Um, but then it became to a point where I could choose if I wanted to do something or not. And if it's
Mhm.
something that I really didn't want to do,
Mhm.
I would just hike up the price. Be like,
Yeah.
okay, if you really want me to do this, you're gonna have to pay this much. And unfortunately, one of them said yes, and I'm like, what? God damn.
Yeah.
And so I got a lot out of it, but it was just a miserable thing. And I remember I hated it so much because at first it was a really fun idea. It
Yeah.
was like this. I can't really say much about it,
Mhm.
but it was my thing. It was like classical style Sargent paintings of
Mm.
things of this thing. But then because of like the politics in their company or whatever,
Mhm.
it became not that anymore and just like graphic banners. And so I'm like,
What?
what am I doing here? And so I remember finishing that and I made that my background of my computer, the
Yeah.
banner, to remind myself to say no.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
You
awesome.
know.
It's
Um,
hard because sometimes, especially with freelance work and client work, it's like you can very easily underestimate the amount of work that goes into it just purely from the back and forth communication and
hmm,
the client potentially not knowing exactly what they want and all that kind of good stuff.
right.
So yeah, I could definitely understand that. The other thing I wanted to ask is, we keep talking about your social media presence. You've got like a pretty big YouTube channel, Instagram, Twitter, all that kind of stuff. Was there kind of like a thing that happened along the way that got you over a hump, or
Hmm.
was it just kind of this gradual growing
It's been
process?
gradual the whole
Okay.
time.
Okay.
Yeah. But the things that did spike things up
Mm-hmm.
were definitely challenges. Like
Mm-hmm.
I made the 100 heads challenge.
Mm.
That was, and to this day, still the most popular thing.
Gotcha.
I think that video has like 500,000 views or something.
That's awesome.
And so, doing something like kind of getting a gauge of what people wants and need to learn and practice. And I'm thinking a lot of these people, including myself, want to get better at drawing heads and faces. So I made that challenge, and every day there's like like I did that over a year ago, but every day I'm getting like a new tag saying, hey, I'm starting a challenge, blah, 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 100 heads, 10 days, that thing. So I think things that motivate people to do it, but also share where they got it from. Like, hey, this is Ahmed's challenge. So that definitely helped. So anyone listening, make up a challenge, and get people on board.
Yeah. Or look for a problem someone might have and try to find a creative solution to fixing it. I think that's kind of what you did, especially since you're, an expert at, drawing heads and stuff like that. People could look back to you and be like, oh, he actually knows what he's talking about, giving help.
Right. Yeah.
Kind of
definitely be good at the thing.
Yeah.
Don't make an anatomy challenge. Well, actually, even if you're not good at it, because you could say, hey, I suck at anatomy. Who's going to join me on this challenge? Here's my Pinterest board. Let's dive in,
But
going off that, go ahead.
I was just going to quickly add, like, being like more of a character artist, like, do you ever struggle with like multiple, like when you, for example, feedback and like, because I remember you were saying about exaggerating facial proportions and like how portraits like tend to get more likes. I was just curious, like, have you ever struggled with like maybe having to change your style a bit, or like keeping that constant style, or do you feel like that doesn't really bother too much? I don't know if that question came. Yeah.
No, I totally get it. It definitely did, I guess, hinder me for a long time because people know my work for a certain style, and I felt trapped by that, right? And I still do to an extent, but not I'm not as beholden to it as much anymore. Like if I want to go dark and more realistic, I don't have any qualms doing that. But before I would have been like, no, people, they'll unfollow me. They won't like this as much as the other one, so why bother? But that's all kind of out the window. And that's through journaling and writing and trying to sort this stuff out.
Gotcha. Right, because I think I see most of my peers, they're a bit afraid to, like for me, for example, I'm quite afraid to try like other proportions because we have like this kind of generalized almost kind of style thing where we don't kind of push the anatomy or put extra. It's always going to look that sexy kind of art style or something like that. But yeah, it's something I struggle with it. Yeah.
I thought about making an inquiry for myself regarding appeal, especially on social media, and then the willingness to break from that mold, because you never know what else might be appealing, but also does everything you do have to be appealing? Which it doesn't, right? Like when I look back at the artists I admire, sure, their stuff is appealing, but they also have other things that I love that other people would be just overlook it, For example, there's a old German artist, Egon Schiele. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing it, fellow Germans. But I don't know if you're familiar with the work, but the anatomy is really kind of like strained and twisted, and like the proportions are kind of weird. The fingers are all long and bony. I love that stuff. And so I started to look at that a little bit more recently, again. And I know for a fact that's not popular, but why would that stop me from diving in and enjoying it? And so like I start to think about social media as this kind of like swirling hurricane, and sometimes you got to step out of it and be like, okay, I know I need to be there inside it and doing what everyone wants and like be popular. I just want to take a break and see what else is out here in this calm world where there's not a constant flow of likes and pictures and stuff. And so what happens out here is like exploring the unknown imagination. Whereas in the swirling part, it's like, it's a machine. It's the same stuff over and over. And the reason is because it works. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think as artists, we need to kind of escape from that a bit. And there's a really good video. I forgot his name. I think it was maybe Kevin something. He's a cinematographer, not cinematographer. He's a film director, I believe, and they do these like really good art talks regarding creativity. And he described it like this, where there's a main continent. This is the continent of order and familiarity, things that are structured. People are happy here because things work. And there's beauty here. There's art. There's movies. There's cinema. There's music. It works. But the job of an artist, to kind of discover themselves, whatever, is to willingly step outside of that continent and go to these islands of the unknown, right? And it's a risky thing because you're forfeiting this thing that works. You're forfeiting in that moment, like the attention, the praise, the validation, and feeling like you're part of something. So the lonely journey to go out into this like unknown island of, is it even an island? Is it a different dimension? Is it underwater? Is it in a cloud? We don't know. And each artist has their own journey for that. And so the willingness to step out into those islands and then explore the chaos. This chaos doesn't make sense. But what the artist does is it feels everything. The artist feels everything and kind of just observes and creates and rearranges and stuff. And it's a big mess. But if you showed that to the world of order, they'd be like, what is this? No. We want Avengers. Give us Avengers. We want and Sakimi-chan stuff, which she's a great artist. But it's very repetitive and for good reason. She makes a lot of money and she enjoys it. That's awesome. But the masses want that. And so when you go to this world of like chaos, there's also the part where he talks about in the video where you have to take that chaos and repackage it and make it digestible for people who are willing to explore new things. And then the irony is, when that happens, that becomes the new trend. And so everyone's doing that now. Now the artist is like, okay, well, that's boring. They go outside again and bring something back. Go outside, bring something back. But it's the willingness to take that risk that's really difficult.
I'm also a strong believer in, if you can really inject your passion and your kind of like identity and what you're really interested in your work, and you put it out there, there's gonna be people who see that in some way, shape, or form. Even if it is outside your normal realm. Like if you're really, really excited about something and you put it online, people are gonna be able to tell that you're excited about that thing. So I think that's a way to kind of positively wrap your head around taking a little bit of a riskier approach with diving outside your comfort zone. So
you're totally right, man. Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of piggyback off of that, there's always like niches, and you're right, because like if you go out in the world, if you go outside of the comfort world or the echo place of everything repeating itself, you find yourself, you find what you're really into, and it's like the willingness to be vulnerable with that and then bringing it back. It might be dangerous because it's like, you're not allowed to like that, right? Having just a disclaimer, there are things that are not okay. I get that.
Like within reason.
Like what?
Within reason, basically.
Yeah, within reason. Like you don't go out in the world and come back with this idea that a certain group of people should die, right? Obviously. But you go and you find yourself, and that might be such a small niche, but it speaks to you, and for a fact that it's not going to be in the mass production pop star kind of stuff. But when you put it out there, if it happens to get into the view or like the field of view of somebody who's just like that, then you start to build a little following, and then that starts to grow. Hey, have you heard this guy? He does this stuff, and he likes to
draw all the spindly fingers.
Yeah, she likes to tell stories like this, and like nobody does this, and I really want more of this, and then that makes a new community, right? So, yeah, totally. I don't know, I feel like I derailed there, but go ahead.
No, that's good. We have a question that relates from Swoo Rats, who said, "Did social media make you feel a different way about your art?"
Yeah, sure. I think everybody knows that. I mean, uh, I imagine it like, I mean, we're visual people. We kind of have stories in our heads. So
Mm-hmm.
I imagine it like we're back in middle school or high school or elementary school, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And you're at recess. There's a playground. There's an area, blacktop with some basketball. And it feels like that compared to if you're just at home making art, right? It's as if like every day you're in your little chamber where you make art, and then you step outside onto the playground and hold up your art.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, hi, anyone? Please? Okay, let me go back in. Try again. Hello, hey, maybe. Oh, yeah, you like it? Okay, I'll do more of this. Okay. So it's definitely a human nature social interaction thing going on.
Mm-hmm.
And it's once you see the meta of that and zoom out, you could sort of break from it.
Mm-hmm.
And ironically, when you do that, everybody loves your work.
Yeah.
It's just a weird paradox, I think.
I think even if you're like creating work that does appeal to the masses, as long as you're not just like only doing fan art or something like that, like people still see value in your style or you as a person. So if you can build up, like we were just talking about, like if you just do portraits on your Instagram for a little while because they do well, and then you start breaking off into something else, I guarantee like maybe you'll not retain your whole audience, but
right.
You're going to keep some of that because people just like you. And right. One of the things that I'm really big on as well is kind of being more open, or at least I try to be more open myself, and shoot some Insta stories. I did this YouTube channel in the first place because I was a little, I don't want to say insecure, but I was one of those people that wasn't great at public speaking and stuff like that. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to practice kind of getting my voice out there, like, and my physical face, right? So
great.
did you kind of feel like you diving into the YouTube space and presenting yourself more openly kind of also helped you grow your art and grow your brand as well? How important was that for you, do you feel?
Yeah. So I'm going to try to backtrack a little bit.
Sure.
You mentioned that you build your audience with something that's popular and then eventually doing your own thing. That's also a great strategy. I don't find anything wrong with fan art. It's like if that works, there's nothing wrong with it. If you really like, I don't know, an anime and a lot of people like it, there's nothing wrong with using that, right? I was thinking about making a piece of art or a video or a film of the art police. These people who are like, this is not allowed. You're just doing this. That's cheating. You traced. Like, go home. Let artists have fun. As long as they're not like, stealing people's work and whatever. Like, who are you? Like, why? Like, where's your art? What do you do? Well, who are you? So, I kind of forgot the second part of your question. So,
basically, like presenting yourself and your identity to your audience.
Yeah.
And the importance of that.
Absolutely. And I think when I was in my darker place, I think maybe even just a year ago, it's always up and down, but now it's just in the above ground feeling where I'm not in a dark place. I start to think and overthink, overanalyze, and have all these assumptions and, very much the hermit mode of trying to predict all the potential landmines in the world. They're going to say this, they're not going to like this. Oh, I'll get canceled or blah, 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 blah. Like my mind like tries to strategize and play it very safe. But the moment I started making videos again, maybe a few months ago, all that went away. It's like, dude, I feel so relaxed now. That's people good. Are just people, and earlier you mentioned how this is helping you with public speaking and presenting yourself. That was huge for me. Before, like maybe my first year at Art Center, I would stutter. I was shy. I didn't understand how to communicate an idea with rhythm and emphasis. I was kind of like monotone and afraid. So I think this helped me, take ideas and boil them down to very simple sentences and visuals,
Sure.
and that helps me communicate way better. And with my art, yeah, I think it's helping me. I think through cognitive behavioral therapy or exposure therapy of just putting myself out there little by little, and it's helping me be a lot more free with what I do. And so, especially now, I mean, it's easy to say this, but like now that I do have a big following, I feel less stress and pressure to, I guess, live up to expectations, and instead just, okay, well, what do I want to explore? Put that out there, document it. That's it. That's all you got to do.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's a cool point to be in, because I think that's the stage in your career where you really can do something off the rails, you know?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Cool. All right. We got a couple other questions. Oh, here's a good one. Who's your favorite artist that is unknown to people?
Man.
Like you had just mentioned the German woman, right? Like,
I think it's a dude. Let me just post that.
Oh, and here's another good question. What are the main differences in mindset between when you were a student and now regarding the art industry?
I'll get back to that question. Another artist that I wanted to bring up is, I don't know if you could find his art anymore, but back when conceptart.org was pretty big, Luke Hollis was one of my biggest influences.
Okay.
I don't know if I could share my screen.
You should be able to.
Yeah, let me just pull that up and make sure nothing embarrassing's on the screen.
Luke Hollis.
Like, I think once people see his sketches, they're gonna be like, "Oh, yeah, I see where you came from."
Gotcha.
Like, actually, I don't know if I could show these because my friend sent them to me, and I'll show a couple. Ones that have whatever. I'm gonna do a quick transition. Can I do this? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
There we go.
So, this dude was a huge influence on me, and like the rendering, I was so blown away by this kind of stuff, and nobody knows him. I'm like, if this guy started Instagram now, he'd probably be overlooked for a little bit, but then like I think he would explode. Like everyone would be like, "Oh my god, this guy's something." Like this type of loose line work, that is beauty to me.
Looks like it's maybe one stroke.
Possibly. Yeah, a bit of mix of things. Totally. I don't know if these kinds of images are allowed on Twitch, but obviously a very good painter too. So that would be an unknown artist that is one of my favorites. So, and what was the other question?
That's awesome. The other question was basically, what was the difference in your mindset between when you were a student and now regarding the art industry?
Mindset as a student was, I don't know if it was because of my mental state, but it was very much wanting to prove myself. Like this kind of desperate need to feel seen, and I think that's the result of my developmental years of not feeling seen. So that played into it a lot, and I'm sure a lot of people struggle with this. But in a more universal way, how did I feel as a student? I'm different now, but back then I was really cocky. I really believed I was the best in the world at everything. And unfortunately, that mindset did help me get propelled into my studies. Like, yeah, I'm the best. I'm going to make sure everyone knows I'm the best by doing really well. It's kind of unhealthy though, because it's very much like a narcissistic way of looking at it. But now the mindset, transitioning to being a professional, the mindset was less about proving myself and more about collaborative work to get the job done. You got to understand what the team needs. It's not about you anymore. It's about the deadline. You have 2 weeks to get this cinematic out. You have, 1 week to get this armor set out so that it's on the online shop before Halloween hits, right? So like it was because I had a task. It wasn't about me. You know, and I think that helped me learn about myself more. Because when my art became a identity thing, like, hey, this is me, look how great I am,
Yeah.
the art was unhealthy. It was more about like, you know, just this kind of facade, very, very superficial. But when there's a purpose, like, hey, find a buddy to collaborate with who wants to get better at 3D, and because this is what I'm doing right now, this a friend of mine, and it's like, if I was to just design a character for fun, it's one thing. But now that I have a purpose, like, I know exactly what I want him to model, and I want to make this, and I'll put this here, and I want to see how he can handle this. And so when your purpose is about something else or something bigger than yourself, your expression, I think, is more authentic.
Yeah, I definitely agree
versus
with that.
the masks that we want to put on for everyone to see.
So when you were a student, did you kind of see yourself going in more of this independent route, or were you kind of just like, I just need to get a job at a studio, and that was kind of what you were thinking?
No, I wasn't thinking about independence at all.
Okay.
Like, at the time, all I cared about was validation. It's like, what's his name got a job at that place? Well, I'm going to prove that I can also get a job there. And, you know, it's a very childish yet useful mindset at the time.
Yeah, it's a good kick in the butt for yourself, basically.
Yeah. It was very much pride oriented. This would be a great time for an ad read. So if you've heard of Ridge Wallet, I'm just kidding.
But Ahmed, just really quickly as well, because you mentioned about collaboration, and was that something you experienced like during your studies? Like, did you do projects where there were like more of a collaborative approach, or was it more independent?
Kind of. I think my pride prevented me from actually collaborating with other people to make visual art. But there was a sort of exchange collaboration I did. So I don't know if you've seen Steven Zapata on my channel. He has a YouTube channel.
Sure.
Well, like I said, when I first started Art Center, I was very bad at public speaking. I couldn't do a presentation, and at least not very well. I wasn't exciting. There was nothing there. It was just very much, here's the PowerPoint and that's the thing, and please, okay, bye. You know. And then I think it was like second term, we had to present our things, and here comes Steven. He goes up there, had everyone fooled, right? And it was like our exterior design class, so we had to actually build models of storefronts. And he goes, he starts off like with a really monotone, like, okay, so here's my project, and and this, but suddenly, out of nowhere, for this store, what I'll bring to you is a series of narcissistic mirrors for your enjoyments. Behold! And so he did this full performance. I'm like, I had goosebumps. Like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And so that's when I was like, okay, look, dude, I'll tell you everything I know about drawing and painting. You show me how to do that.
Yeah.
Right. And so he would tell me to do studies, not of art, but performances. Like, you know, find a comedian, find George Carlin, whatever. Find your favorite movie, memorize the words, perform it over and over again. You know, by doing that, you start to feel the rhythm of speaking and carrying a story and going up here, but then down here a little bit. So like that, you know, that was the collaboration that I think changed my life, because it carried on to YouTube. And
that's great. Have you heard of a channel called Charisma on Command?
I keep seeing it in recommendations. Okay. What is it?
It's basically exactly what you're saying. This guy just teaches you how to be charismatic. He analyzes other successful charismatic people and like how they approach their public speaking, how they approach telling a story. And especially when I was starting my YouTube channel, like I was watching a lot of those videos just to kind of see how better to carry myself. Even in he even talks about being in social settings and just like if you're at a party, like how to maintain the engagement of the people, and you know, like when to be quiet, when to talk, stuff like that might feel kind of obvious, but until somebody explains it to you, some things start clicking, and I think it makes you a little bit of a better, you know, speaker, like you were saying. Kind of having some sort of a coach, especially if you're feeling like you're a little bit more shy, you know.
Right. Yeah, because I feel like that's something our education could implement more, just like because I did 1 year in Vancouver, but they got us to like really speak out and present in a crowd of like 30 other people, and like I was 18 at the time, but I was like really terrified to really go out. But by the sixth like term, I definitely got confidence.
Okay.
But there's something that I noticed with students in the UK, that they probably don't get that opportunity, and I feel like concept design in general. Do you feel it's something students should practice and kind of just at least getting their ideas out through, because communication
especially now, I think if it's not for everybody, because a lot of the concept artists I worked with, one of the best in the world in my eyes, very shy, very to themselves. Like when they have their idea, it's like they kind of just but like all their work just speaks for itself, right? It's not necessary. But if you want to be good at communicating your ideas, telling a pitch, realizing how little time you actually have to capture someone's attention, especially if you want to go into movies or storytelling, storyboarding, animatic stuff, like the pacing of speaking and performing and going highs and lows, and that's all really important. So I think it's all under the umbrella of storytelling, really. So I think if that's something you're interested in, for sure. If not, like taking a class, an acting class, then just picking people to like kind of mimic and practice. But I think most people should take some kind of acting class if you're in this field. If you're a storyteller kind, if you want to just paint robots, cool, have fun.
Interesting.
Go
ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say, like, getting the chance to talk briefly with Ian McKay is like he inspires me so much, because he's always got such a amazing like way of presenting, and
my God,
he's so enthusiastic. I couldn't believe like how much energy he had. Was definitely inspiration to me.
Yeah, his Gnomon DVDs back in the day were really inspirational for me back during Art Center. The visual storytelling one, it's like a 3-part or 4-part thing. His background, if you've ever watched his interviews, is when he was a kid, he would put on radio shows for his friends, and he would film and perform and do these stage acting things.
Interesting.
So that carries over to his artwork. It's like he gets into the character, and he speaks the voices of the goblins and stuff, which brings me back to Steven. His background at high school, I believe, was a lot of theater and dramas. That's why he had that. So these people are like rare, but you can learn from them for sure.
That's really interesting. Cool. I have one more question about kind of like time management and stuff like that. So you had talked about like when you're kind of in your lows, it kind of sounds like your mind is going in a couple different directions at once. Do you keep any sort of like schedule to kind of keep you on track at all times, or are you kind of like a day by day sort of person?
Echo, what's next on my calendar?
Matt, your next event is blanket your workshop on Friday, October 9th.
I don't know if you could hear that, but
a workshop.
Yeah. So for me, I hate schedules.
Okay.
I hate routines. I hate this stuff. It's just like I just want to, because it feels like rules, right?
Yeah.
But as a professional, we have to have something. So I bit the bullet and just started putting stuff on Google Calendar.
Gotcha.
For like things like that. Regarding daily routine and time management, my sleep is so messed up right now.
Okay.
I stay up too late. What I want to ideally have is wake up in the morning around 8 a.m., work out, do art, do the videos, get back to emails, maybe lift for a little bit, eat lunch. So it's like there's the ideal, but I don't really have it. The thing that gets me effective with time management is reminding myself of the deadlines. Like scaring myself to death about like, oh, this is due tomorrow. Even if it's due a couple of days from now, like, well, it's due tomorrow, right? In that mindset, you have to get it done, right?
But isn't it hard when a lot of your deadlines are kind of like self-enforced as well?
It's the worst, man.
Yeah.
I've thought about like hiring some kind of secretary or management something or other.
Yeah,
but
an assistant.
I don't make that much money yet, so.
Gotcha. That's interesting. Yeah, because that's something that I've like been revising and working on for, you know, however long, past couple of years. And it's just, I'm interested to see how other people approach it, because I think all artists are not necessarily the best at it, and we kind of have to force ourselves to figure out
Yeah.
something that works specifically for us, especially if you're pretty freelance or independent and you don't have to wake up and go to a
Right.
studio or whatever. So
I think ideally, if I get married someday, she'll be like good at that.
I mean, that's
So,
my
yeah,
that definitely helps. I'm married, so we wake up, you know, at 8 a.m. and I kind of
that's
just
awesome.
make myself sit down and do my work. But
Mhm.
yeah, so I'm more of a night owl, so it's hard for me sometimes.
Right on.
Would you? Oh, just very quickly
Yeah,
from
yeah.
me as well. In terms of like schooling, would you say you like that time management during school helped you in the like when you went to work, or did you learn that working kind of?
So when I was at Art Center back then, it used to be really this kind of boot camp style of
Yeah.
the school. A lot of work, a lot of sweating and, you know, crying and, you know, late nights, a lot of all-nighters too. It might have been overkill. It definitely over prepared for the real world. Because when I was in the industry, I was like, this is so easy compared to Art Center in terms of like the amount of work. So unfortunately, even during Art Center, I would still put stuff off to last minute. And I think doing that and then suffering the consequences taught me the lessons that I needed to learn.
Interesting.
So I think when you're in an extreme state where maybe your adrenaline's going, you learn the most. And I think that's probably why it was so successful as a learning tool. But yeah, I think realizing afterward that it was an over preparation was necessary. The time management at work was kind of like made for you. You know, you got to be there from 9 to 6 or 8 to 5, depending on what you want to do. You know, mileage may vary depending on the studio, but like you just had to get the thing done by the end of the day. You know, you don't have the option to take a break and play Overwatch for a couple hours, right? You're just there with your artist friends to do it. Yeah. So
I feel like because I feel like that's something a lot of my peers struggle with because some of them probably work more on like the nighttime or you know during the day, and their schedules are kind of like you know a bit messed up.
yeah,
And I think coming out, obviously the thing that scares me the most is kind of getting into that routine as well, and kind of finding that time where like I'm like you're most effective. Do you have like a certain day period where you feel like you're kind of in the zone or most effective?
yeah. And there's actually, you know, before I say what it is for me, there's a really good book on this called Deep Work. I think it's Calendar Report or something. But he talks about the flow state and this idea of the eudaimonia machine, which is a kind of architecture of 5 rooms, where the first room is the intro, lounge, coffee. The next room is like artwork and inspiration on the walls. The next room is the library of like references. And then the 4th room is the meeting that you have about what you're going to do. The 5th room is the dungeon. And when you go in there, you're disconnected from all the previous rooms and it's just you and the thing. Ideally, that's when you're the most creative, right? And so how does that scale up or act as a template for not just me, but a lot of artists? I think, as you mentioned, nighttime for some reason seems to be when we all do our best work. I don't know why. I'm wondering if it's because it feels like the world is asleep and you're in your own kind of dream world and you get to do whatever. You feel a bit disconnected from the flow of the regular world. But yeah, for me, like for some reason, my best creativity happens at night, unfortunately. And that's really unhealthy because, you know, I'm like 32 now and I can't really do all-nighters anymore. I mean, I could, but I just suffer more. But ideally, I want to shift that to the morning. I also found that when I'm on a consistent schedule or I'm waking up at 6 or something, and, you know, maybe 4 or 5 days into doing that routine, the mornings are amazing. I get so much done.
Mm-hmm.
Really great work happens. So I think it can be either or, but it's, I think, a habit that needs to be developed.
Yeah, I would agree.
Mm.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well, we've hit around the hour mark. Oliver, do you have any last minute questions?
I guess the last thing, these questions probably appeared before, but like, what would you kind of tell yourself differently if you're going to school again? Like,
So I get in my time machine. I go back to 2009 when I'm starting out art school. Is that?
That's a good one.
Honestly, I wouldn't do anything differently because what I did got to me where I was.
Mhm.
But there's some things that I could have done better. Probably, I know this isn't really related to, student mentality or whatever, but I'd say go to therapy, like get help. There's a lot of things that held me back and made me feel anxiety and things like that. It's like my pride kept me from actually seeking help, right? All of us have our own stories and our own reasons that we're held back from our childhood, from bullies, from school, from whether or not it was a big deal or not. Even a mini trauma will affect the way you act as an adult. So I think, I don't know, I was 21 when I started art school. So I don't know if I would have been receptive to doing that. But ideally, to optimize, I would say therapy, get help, find people, surround yourself with people who want to support you, not people who want to use you. That's another big one. And just be very careful, like with what I don't know. Don't let other people walk all over you. That's what I would say, because that happened a lot too.
right.
That's a good one.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for hopping on, man. This was a good talk. I think we covered a lot of stuff that we haven't really dove into previously in our other Art Friends interviews. So, yeah. Is there anything you wanna plug right now? I mean, we have your ArtStation link up on our like little banner thing. Anything else?
That's enough for me. I do, if you maybe my YouTube channel or something, because I will be live streaming soon for a XP pen giveaway. So I'll be, if anyone's interested in that, I'll be doing that on my channel.
I just posted the link.
Thank you.
And I'll be sure to post that in the YouTube channel, YouTube description as well. Cool. All right, man. Thank you so much for hopping on with us. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching, and we'll see you guys next time.
Yeah. Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Perfect.